Hello, Dr. Joel Feeman, New Life Chiropractic here. I want to invite you to join us for our Heart Smart workshop, where we're going to be teaching that although society right now is taking more blood pressure medications, cholesterol-lowering drugs, more deaths from those different things, your body was created with God with this incredible potential to heal and be well. There is a way that you can thrive in this world of stress, and we're going to teach you a little bit about how you can maximize your God-given health and healing potential. Stay tuned.
After the first readjustments, the pain in my neck, the nerve was released.
He has helped me, and I'm trying to tell others about him.
My daughter, who's 4, hasn't had the stomach issues she was having.
One of the things we really appreciate is emphasis on education and helping us learn for ourselves what it means to be healthy.
When it comes to health, I always ask this question, and the question first off is, how many of you truly want to be healthy as God desires and created you to be able to be? Anybody? Okay, good, good. How many of you want your families to be healthy? Very good. What about this? When it comes to your health, other than maybe your relationship with Jesus Christ, what is the next most important thing that you have, your most valuable, important asset that you have here on this earth? Is there anything more important than your health? Well, let me ask you this. If you don't have your health, maybe you say your family's more important, right? Because a lot of people will say that their health is important, their family's important, their relationship with the Lord is important, and their finances are important, their job's important, all these different things are important. But if you have a problem with your health, will that affect your family? Absolutely. I know from personal experience, when you have somebody in your close, your immediate family, you have something happen, and it's different in a moment. Your whole life can literally be transformed just like that in a moment. And so it affects your family, your finances. If you can't work and perform and do the things that you like to do or want to do or need to do to pay your bills, will that affect, will your health have an effect on that? Of course it will. What about your finances? Anybody ever have a hospital bill before? Yeah. One of the top things that, when you think about it, top reasons for bankruptcy in this country is what? Health or medical expenses. Definitely not health expenses, but medical expenses, right? The second the most common actually reason they say for divorce and relationship problems is also the strain on a marriage because of health issues and finances associated with that. And so there's a lot when it comes down to health. My goal today is to give you a perspective about how to maximize your heart, your function of your entire body for that matter, but to take some of the things that we've been taught through mainstream medicine or mainstream media, challenge them a little bit to see if in fact maybe what they're teaching you is not the solution to you reaching the best level of health. Anybody open to that? Absolutely. So here's the thing. The first thing I want you to understand is that I am not a cardiologist, I am a what? Chiropractor. Which means that what I say is probably going to be different than what a cardiologist might say. If you're wanting that perspective of take blood pressure medication for the rest of your life, take an aspirin a day and Coumadin and cholesterol drugs for the rest of your life, and have test after test, and it won't reduce your risk of having heart disease, well, you're not going to get that here. Is that fair enough? Okay? If you want that opinion, then go and get that opinion. But we all pretty much know the treadmill of what happens here. What we want to do is we want to talk about a perspective of true life and health as much as we possibly can. So with our notes, I try the best I can to go through these and make sure everything kind of lined up the best we could. But I want you for just a second to play along. I want you to raise your hand if you or someone you know is taking an aspirin a day, a blood pressure medication, cholesterol drugs, has had any type of heart arrhythmias, pacemaker put in, bypass surgery. Does anybody know anybody who has any type of heart issue whatsoever? Okay? Now keep your hand up if you know at least 5 people in your life that who are taking any type of medication whatsoever or complain about symptoms on a regular basis. Anybody? Yeah, I mean, look around. It's pretty much everybody. Because when you look at what's happening right now in America, a lot of people say health is important. It's one of the main focal points of the politicians and whatnot as far as health care and Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, and all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, it's a nightmare because, you know, I think the head of Mayo said it best when he said, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he basically said that I basically rebuke the idea of health care because we don't have a health care system. We have a crisis care model. You know, healthcare is something that would work to get people healthy, but when you look at the World Health Organization, what do you think is happening when it comes to America's health right now? Has it gotten higher or lower? Better or worse? You know what I mean? Are we on more or less drugs? Are we having more or less hospitals in Fort Wayne? You see what I mean? So the reflection of health, when you see hospitals popping up on every area of town, and there's one across the street, and there's one down the road or whatever, you're looking at this, and if you think a little bit, if it's supply and demand, the law of supply and demand, why are they building all these hospitals in Fort Wayne? You ever think about that? Is it because your families are just totally healthy and you know, everybody is great, feeling great, tons of energy and whatnot? And we just talked about it a minute ago. How many of you had your hands up when you're talking about 5 people in your lives who have some type of sickness, symptom, complaint, or problem? And it's overwhelming when you start to look at people in their health issues. You can walk through, not that we want to judge people by any means, but if you look through, go walk through like a grocery store for that matter. What do you see people loading up in their carts? Are these people, I mean, realistically, if you had to judge them, and I wouldn't get in that practice, but if you had to judge them, you know, based off of their actions and their desire to be healthy, would you say the majority of people really, truly desire to be healthy? And maybe for some of you, that's a little bit of a kick in the pants and maybe a wake-up call, but you got to be congruent with what you say you want and what your actions are saying you want. Is that fair enough? Because truth sometimes can hurt, but truth is what we need if we want to get to the place that we say we really desire to be at. So when it comes to, you know, the big thing as far as recognizing the bigger picture of heart problems and health problems, part of what we want to talk about is just some of the, and I'll add, you know how I do it, I kind of add in here and there. We want to talk about cholesterol. Does cholesterol actually cause heart disease? Okay? Because a lot of people, that's what their doctors are teaching them. And so, you know, if you have cholesterol that's high at all, they're going to tell you to take cholesterol lowering drugs. So we need to talk about this because that's one of the top drugs. You know, when I first got into practice, you know, to be honest with you, I was terrified to speak in front of people. Terrified. Didn't do it for the first year I was in practice. I didn't write the newsletters. I didn't do all that stuff. Not that I didn't necessarily want to, but you see, growing up under regular chiropractic care, I didn't realize how bad it was until I started seeing patients come in and them sharing their belief or understanding of health. And I saw that, my goodness, people really, a lot of them don't have any idea about what it takes to get well and stay well. And so when you look at this, one of the ladies that came in, one of the first new patients I had when I first opened up, was a gal named Marilyn. And when she came in, she was with me for just a couple months, and then she passed. And what I found out was that she passed because she had liver failure as a result of the cholesterol drugs that she was taking. In the first year, I had 3 patients who died because of drug reactions. And for me, that was the wake-up call that I needed to be able to make me do what I'm doing now in sharing with you guys, because, you know, another gal, her name was Miss Jeanette. She was 84 years old. And maybe some of you have heard this story before, but when she first came into the office, she was in excruciating low back pain. And when she sat in the office and she was filling out her paperwork, she literally was sobbing, and her paperwork was getting all kind of smudgy and nasty looking. So I went up to her, and it was just me and one staff at the time, and I said, "Man, you know, if you're in pain, you need to position differently," because my thought was that she was hurting so bad that was causing her tears. And she says, "Doc, you know what? I've been living with this pain for over 40 years. I am terrified to be in here right now. Because somebody told me, my doctor told me years ago, that if I went to a chiropractor, they would paralyze me and hurt me." And I said, "Holy smokes, what a lie from the pit of, you know, flipping hell. That's not true at all." You know, so I'm looking at it and I said, "Listen, you can't believe that stuff." I said, "That's a lie. You know, the power that made your body heals the body." You know, I shared a little about chiropractic. Point being is this. Her doctor told her they planted a seed of death, that chiropractic would hurt her, not help her. So she went through surgery after surgery. They cauterized nerves. They put her on medications for, you know, for most of her life at that point. And then after coming in for a couple weeks, her pain was gone. Because the power that made her body did what? Healed her body. And we thank God that we were part of that. But you know, it's an amazing thing. But here's what happened though. This gal then, her eyes were open. She was a really sweet, awesome Pentecostal lady, you know what I mean? And her eyes were open to a truth of health, you know what I mean? And so she started coming in, and she would not miss a beat. I mean, she was one of those people who was right on time, there all the time, loved seeing, just like I love seeing you guys too. But, you know, it's one of those, she missed one day. So I told my team, I said, give her a call, check on her. Couldn't get a hold of her. So we kept trying and trying and trying. Finally, we left them, several messages, and we get a call back like a week and a half later or something like that. And it was her son, and he said, Doc, you didn't hear? You didn't see the obituaries? I said, no, what happened? She said, well, my mom, her doctor called her, you know what I mean, one of the nurses, whoever, their office called and said, we haven't seen you in a while. You need to come in. It's time for your yearly checkup. So we're going to do a heart checkup. So they basically gave her some medications, put her on a treadmill, and that right there, she had a reaction to the drug and died right in the office. And I'm like, holy smokes. What's interesting is the last time I saw this gal, she had brought into the office these two ceramic ascending Jesus statues. You ever seen those? That she made. And she says, Doc, man, you helped me so much. I wanted to give you one of these. One for your house and one for your office. You know what I mean? That was the last time I saw that gal. You know, and so we started to recognize that people need help in terms of understanding. So the principles, I can go through a lot of different stuff as far as drugs are bad and all that kind of stuff. I think we innately already kind of know that a little bit, right? So I'm not going to go into that too deeply, but just open your eyes a little bit so you can start to look into it for yourself a little bit more. Because one of the things that we find is that a lot of times when people go to their doctor for a variety of different health conditions, whether it's their heart, their blood pressure, digestive tract, or anxieties or whatever, they just take the drugs that the doctors recommend to them. They never look into it. They never ask about alternatives. And then when their health starts going downhill, they kind of scratch their head and wonder why. And so all we try to do is we say, listen, if you decide to take drugs, that's up to you. But my goodness, at least look into it. Look into the options that you have, because if you're just going to do what everybody else does, what did Einstein say about insanity? It's doing what? The same thing over and over, expecting, though, a different outcome, and that just tends to be what happens. So when we look at, for example, why cholesterol drugs don't cure the heart disease, we want to talk about how to fight heart disease naturally and safely, and then a little bit about God's thinking versus man's thinking, because we get caught up on man's thinking, and we think that it's always the right way, but what does Proverbs say about that? Proverbs, I believe it's 14, says, there's a way that seems right to man, but in the end it leads to what? Death or destruction, depending on what version. 25% of children 5 and up, according to the U.S. News and World Report, 25%, that's 1 out of every 4 kids from 5 and up, already have plaque in their arteries. 1 out of 4 kids starting at 5 years old? Is that good or bad? That's horrible again, you see? And let me ask you this, what do you see kids nowadays eating? Well, you know what the number one food is that kids start to learn to eat? What'd you say? French fries. The number one food that kids start to eat in America, they say, is French fries. They're soft, they're a little bit squishy, you know what I mean? So we're starting these kids off right away. You go into the schools nowadays, and I thank God that they're starting to look at the food and realize it's not necessarily a good thing. But you look at what kids are eating nowadays, a lot of kids are raised off of what? Corn dogs, chips, you know what I mean? Macaroni and cheese, and drinking soda all the time, and sugars. I mean, most of their food, if you really think about it, is nothing but chemicals and substances, but not necessarily food the way God intended for our bodies to be able to eat. Anybody disagree with that? No, because it's just the way it is. What about this? Heart disease kills twice as many women as all cancers combined. It's a big problem, isn't it? You look over here and it says a woman, now this is scary, but it says a woman who has either cardiovascular disease or stroke before 50 years old is twice as likely to die as a man. When we look at 2010, Americans spent over $444 billion on just heart-related problems. That's a lot of cash, isn't it? We look over here, it says approximately 80 million Americans have heart disease according to the current statistics. 18% of all Americans have hypertension. Over 900,000 deaths per year are associated with heart disease. And then it goes back to the whole thing as far as silent killer, feeling versus function. When do most people find out that they have a heart problem? When they're having a heart attack. And that my friends, is that's too late. Okay? And sometimes people, this is a scary thing, sometimes people, they'll have that, and I praise God for crisis like cardiologists who in a crisis manner, they can save your life. That's not a bad thing. If, God forbid, you have a heart attack, my goodness, go and get that dealt with so you can still live. But this is the bad thing. John Hopkins, you've all heard of John Hopkins Medical University, right? They showed studies years ago, and they said this. They said only 1 out of every 10 people who have a bypass surgery change their lifestyle desiring longer health, better health. Realizing that the way they lived before was the cause of that, only 1 out of 10 changed. Which means that 90% of people, even though they could have died at that point, they changed nothing. Because there's a behavior right there. It's either a behavior that's learned that people don't care, you know what I mean? Or they don't have a good support system, or maybe they just don't know any better. CNN Health, January 2013, it was just something that Haley found the other day and printed out for me. But it says the title of the article was, Why are Americans dying earlier than their international peers? It says 27 other countries have higher life expectancy. And this has been going on since the 80s. It's slowly declining, and other countries are going up, but it's getting progressively worse. It says U.S. falls behind in many things: infant mortality, homicides, teen pregnancies, drug-related deaths. Those are just a few things. We got some problems here when it comes to our healthcare system. Children and heart disease. The Journal of American Medical Association shows that heart problems in children are as young as 15 years old. 60%. That's over 1 out of every 2 kids. You know what I mean? 15 and 19 already show streaks of plaque in their coronary arteries. In 10 years, it's projected that 50 to 60% of Americans, including children, will be on statin drugs. You'd be surprised how many people come into our office and they're teenagers and the doctors already have them on blood pressure medications and cholesterol drugs. It's scary. It really is that when you're getting teenagers now. I had one gal years ago, she came in, she was 17 years old and she already had been on a high blood pressure medication for half of her life. She was an early teen when a doctor recommended that to her. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's happening out there, unfortunately. When we look at this, prevention. I don't know if you can read it, but I put it on your page there, but Einstein said a couple different things. One thing that's not quoted there is he said this. He said, intellectuals solve problems. Geniuses prevent them. Isn't that amazing when you think about it? Intellectuals, see, there's a lot of people out there who live. I always look at it from a simple point. I look at it like this. When God, in the garden, when He created 2 trees, what were the 2 trees? The tree of what? Knowledge, and the tree of life, right? And He said that, you know what, I want you to live off that tree of life. And man says, we can do that. And then at some point, what did man say? Forget the life, I want the what? Knowledge. And so we have all these people out there who say, I am head smart. I have figured it out. You take these medications. This is the solution. And over here we're looking at it and say, yeah, but this is the life. I want you to live from this point of life, and we're over here. We're stuck over here. And so what happens when we look at this prevention, when it says intellectuals, prevent or solve problems, intellectuals or geniuses prevent them, the whole thing with this is the understanding that prevention is the key. When you look at the people who, let's say, lived to 80, 90, 100 years old and they never actually had the digestive problems or whatever else, I mean, what a miracle that they made it through all the stresses of life and their bodies kept them alive. Isn't that cool when you think about it? You see, most of the time, when do people think about their health? When they've already lost it, right? When it's sick. So when we look at this, in order to prevent disease or reverse heart disease, we have to first know what it is and what is the cause. There's a couple principles that I put down here for you. Principle number 17. These are, when I say principles, on the back, the very last page or the second to last page in your packet, there are the 33 principles that chiropractic was founded off of. Okay, and I'm not going to go through those right now, but I just wanted you to know where this came from. But one of the principles, principle 17, is I believe it's Newton's law, which basically is for every effect there is a cause, and for every cause there is an effect. So when it comes down to, if let's say your blood pressure is high, what question should you be asking? Why? If your cholesterol is high, what question should you be asking? Why? So if your doctor puts you on a blood pressure medication, says, well, the blood pressure is high, so we're going to take it down, the question then would be, why did the body that created, this power that was breathed into my life, if it created me from 2 cells and made me who I am today, and this body has taken care of and managed and organized and repaired and regulated tens of trillions of cells my whole life, if this is the life that God put within there to control that, why did it seem necessary to raise the blood pressure at this point of my life? Does that make any sense? Why is it that my body sees the need to produce the LDL cholesterol at this point of my life? But if I don't ask the whys, and I look at that in terms of saying, well, the blood pressure is high, let's take it down. But if we're contradicting why the body actually has the blood pressure up, not that it's a great thing necessarily, but if in that sense it's a survival mechanism until you actually deal with the underlying cause, you'd be contradicting or going against the way the body was created to heal. Is that true? Yes or yes? So when you look at this, it's my way or get out, right? No. So that's what the whole idea of cause and effect is, getting you to start to look at and ask questions. When principle number 8, it says the function of intelligence. See, this is what, if you look on the back page again, D.D. Palmer, who's the developer of chiropractic, I'll just read one thing, but it says, he said, life is but the expression of spirit through matter. This is one of my favorite quotes from D.D. He said, life is but the expression of spirit through matter. To manifest life requires the union between spirit and body. Now ask yourself the question. The Bible tells us that we're three-part beings, right? What are those parts? Body, mind, and spirit. So you can have a body. Let's say there's a guy or gal who's in a bad car accident, God forbid, and they have their physical body, all their blood's there, their organs are there, and everything is there except the life. Is it going to work? The whole idea is it's this spirit body that we have. The physical body is just basically is used to express it while here on this earth. You with me on that? You understand what I'm saying there? So when you look at what happens here, principle number 8, it says the function of intelligence. There's this life that God put there. Like right now, for example, let's say you had pancakes or orange juice, right? How does your body know what enzymes to produce and release in your body to break down the foods that you just have eaten? How does your body know how much acid? How does your body know how to take the good things, you know what I mean, and pull out, yet keep the bad things out? You see what I'm saying there? Because inside each of us, there's this life that God put there. So you have this intelligence there, and then you have this heart, let's say, the heart cell. And so the whole idea is to get this life down through the heart cell. So what has to happen is the innate wisdom that God put within your body has to communicate openly with every cell of the body. And when the innate wisdom sees a need to the cell, then the innate wisdom sends down a specific message at that moment to that cell so that the body can continue to live at a high level. So right now, if my heart needs a certain amount of healing energy in life to make my heart beat under the current conditions of my body right now, but let's say I start to run in place. Is it the same? You see, this is the thing. The innate wisdom has to always deal in real time, just like that, always, in just less than a split second, on every action, everything that's going on in your body. And if the impulse is sent, let's say 30 seconds too late, then it's not necessarily the right amount for that moment then. You guys getting any of this stuff? It's so incredible how God created you and the life that you have within you, that the whole idea, the function of this intelligence is it's designed to create this specific force or life impulse that the cells of the body need. Then you have principle number 10 that says the function of the force. So the innate wisdom creates this specific message or force. It sends it down through a transmission down to the tissue cell. And so the whole function of the force is then to unite the intelligence, that life, with the matter. So what is matter? Matter is anything that takes up or occupies space, right? So the whole idea is if I have my heart, God forbid, severed and laying on the table, if there's no connection, can my brain control my heart? No. So the whole idea with that, what it's saying is that the tissue, the whole body is just a makeup of different, elements, right? And so the whole idea is to get that life to somehow make those elements actually work. This gets me jazzed up if you really stop and think about it. I mean, this is how incredible it really is when you really stop and think about how awesome God created the body. So when you look at this principle number 30 then, it says, so what is the cause of disease? Remember where it says dis-ease, if you break it down in 2 words, it's dis-ease, because what does dis-ease mean? Dis means lack of, ease means harmony, health, balance, or homeostasis. So when it comes to down the cause of dis-ease, the interference with the transmission of this innate life forces, causes this disease. Is it everybody together there? So let's move on. So when it comes to the cause of heart disease is a narrowing or blockage of the arteries that supply the heart. Okay? So here's the thing then. Correlation. The correlation here is it says there's a weak correlation between cholesterol and heart disease. Cholesterol drugs don't work. It can make things worse. Researchers have stated that medications do not fix the cause. Because the cholesterol itself being high is what? Is it cause or is it effect? It's the effect. So in other words, if I focus on the smoke detector while ignoring why there, not just the fire, but why is there a fire to begin with, then I sit there and I'm doing this the whole time and I get burned up. And so what they're showing is that cholesterol is not the enemy. We have to battle heart disease, working with how the body was designed to work to function heal. How many of you realize that every day of your life, with all the stresses that we have all around us, that our body's innate wisdom is designed to fight on your behalf so you can accomplish and fulfill all the things that God has created you to be able to fulfill in your life? Does that make sense? You have to, as a spirit man, align with His purpose, but that's why you were created. And so when you look at what happens, cholesterol equaling heart disease is like saying that gray hair equals old age. Do you get the correlation there? Just because you have gray hair, does that mean you're old? It's not the hair that does it. You with me on that? Yes, there's a correlation there. And you may see some of the same signs, but that wouldn't explain, like my wife's father who was totally gray when he was 30 years old. You see what I'm saying? So when you look at the signs, yes, and that's what they a lot of times do, is they'll look at high blood pressure, they'll look at cholesterol, and they look and say, well, this is the underlying cause, let's treat that. But have we seen a decline in heart disease deaths in the last 30 years? What about cancer, diabetes? Has there been a decline at all in the last 30 years? In fact, if we're truthful, what have we seen in the last 30 years with these diseases? So all the technology, all the medicine, all the advances in medical science, and yet we're seeing what? An increase in the diseases that take the most lives decades before we're supposed to. And so when you look at what happens with the heart, your heart is just, your body as a whole is absolutely incredible the way God created you. So on your packet, I just basically put this little diagram here so you can see that this is how it's supposed to be, but over time your body responds with inflammation, which eventually takes it down to the point where that's when we have the problem. And that is true. In fact, let's talk about that a little bit. So here's the thing with the Mythbusters. Number one, heart disease and cancer are normal with aging. How many of you believe that? Are heart disease and cancer normal as you age? No. It's common, but it's not normal. Common and normal are not the same. They're very, very different. High cholesterol causes heart disease. The truth, removing cholesterol will not reduce or eliminate the risk of heart disease. This is all, by the way, out of the New England Journal of Medicine. Heart disease is in my family history, so why bother? Any of you ever think like that? Because we see this happen time and time again, where people will come into the office and they'll say, well, my mom and dad, my grandparents, they all had cancer, diabetes, or heart disease, so I'm just going to live the way I want to live. It's not going to help me. I need to take care of myself. Is that truth? No, that's a lie that they're believing. What they found when it comes to the truth is they found that studies show that only 2 to 4% of heart disease and cancer are genetics. Uh-oh. Now that person's called into a life of responsibility, right, and stewardship. Because now it shows that that means that 96 to 98% is the expression of genes through their environment. In other words, if you look at, for example, a family, a lot of times we don't realize the lifestyle that's similar. So if we grew up with mom and dad eating at the same dinner table, on macaroni and diet sodas and going to the same doctor who falls into the habits of prescribing the same drugs, and you know what I'm saying with that? You can take a child from Mexico, China, or Russia, you can raise them in your family, and they're going to start to develop the heart and cancer and problems that you have, God forbid, based off of what you've done, not their lifestyle. It's a choice, and that's the good news. The good news is that if you want to be healthy, even though, God forbid, you had parents or family members who have had these problems, you have the ability to take better care of yourself, so that way that's not going to be the issue for you. And even if it's not for you, what about those genes that you could be passing down to your kids and grandkids? Is it worth it for you to take care of yourself so that the next generation can also be healthy? Because realizing that lifestyle is such a big role, then isn't it important for my kids to see me exercise and eat healthy, live a godly life, and so forth? Because if I'm not doing that, then what am I teaching my kids? The same thing that my parents taught me, not to do those things. And I'm not saying that's the case in my family, I'm just saying as an example, that's kind of what happens there. We pick up on stuff all the time that we don't even realize are embedded within us of who we are based off of the things that we've seen and experienced as we've grown up. The other thing here, truth. It's the oxidation of cholesterol that causes heart disease, or the inflammation. It's the inflammation that causes the heart disease. And that's what you were able to see when you looked at the diagram. More people have heart attacks with normal cholesterol than with elevated. How many of your doctors have told you that? That just because you take down the cholesterol, it wasn't the high cholesterol that killed people. When you look at this, there is a higher death rate with low cholesterol than high. Statin drugs or cholesterol drugs lower cholesterol, but not the majority of heart attacks with stroke. You must know what the studies actually show. You mean I could have done that and made it easier? Well, let's fly through there now. So what's cholesterol? I think by understanding some of the basics here, it'll give you an understanding of what your body is actually doing when you have cholesterol that's elevated based off how God created you. So when you look here, it says a soft, waxy substance that is made in the liver by 80% of the liver. It travels in the blood as two compounds, LDL and HDL. Cholesterol is needed to manufacture hormones, bile, and vitamin D. You cannot make estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, thyroid, cortisol, and a host of other vital hormones without cholesterol. Cholesterol is needed for life. Every cell contains it. Cell membranes. It's used for healing inflammation and damage to the body. Cholesterol is your patch or your mortar in your wall. So in other words, this is what happens. Your brain, through the innate wisdom that God put within you, recognizes that somewhere in the body there is a problem. There's a weakness, there's damage. The stresses of life have caused something to not work, or an area. Just like if you were to see the roads nowadays, and we didn't have a ton of snow yet, but if you go through the roads out there and you see all these different holes and stuff, the road crews do a good job once they're able to what do? They go out and they find the holes, and what happens? They patch them up. Now, is that as good as a brand new road? No. But they do the best they can to make it work, you know what I mean, until they can put a whole new road there. And it's kind of the same thing that happens with LDL. See, LDL, they say, is the bad cholesterol. This is the evil one, they say. Where the HDL, they say, oh, no, that's good. That's when the liver is basically recycled, you know what I mean? And now this is a good cholesterol. But when you look at the bad, you have to understand what is the purpose of the LDL, the bad cholesterol. The purpose is used as a what? To patch up so your body can heal. So what happens when you look at the drugs, LDL transports the cholesterol from the liver to every cell of your body. So basically the LDL is sent from the liver to the cells of the body. The HDL transport cholesterol from the periphery, or the cells, the outside cells, to the liver for excretion and reutilization. So it's the good because, once again, it's kind of like it's recycling. The triglyceride levels, how much fat is in your blood, that's what that's doing. And then both are absolutely essential for life. If we had no bad cholesterol, we would die and die quickly. Because 60% of the nervous system is actually cholesterol. Too low cholesterol leads to hormone imbalance, depression, early death. Low cholesterol leads to depression and suicide. That's one of the top, if you look at, for example, if you're taking statins, one of the things that's one of the serious side effects is suicide. And one of that is because, in severe depression, one of that is because it's destroying your nervous system, because it's taking cholesterol in parts of the body that's needed for your body to function, and it's destroying that. The other thing it does, as I mentioned to you, is liver failure. So what do they do with the liver test? Every 6 weeks, 6 months, they want these cholesterol, people who are taking statins, to go in there to do the liver enzyme test and whatnot. So what are they looking for? They know that it's going to cause your liver to fail. The question is why. So what happens here is 16% more people have heart attacks with low to normal cholesterol, again, according to the New England Journal of Medicine. Archives of Neurology. People with low LDL or the good cholesterol, are more likely to develop Alzheimer's. It's now also shown that you can increase this through weight loss, exercise, quit smoking, and consuming healthy fats. So once again, the good news is you have the ability to increase the good, right, and also decrease the bad. So when it comes to time, it's talking about inflammation. New England Journal of Medicine again says cholesterol medications recently showed to increase in cancer mortality. It doesn't stop there. Cholesterol drugs also cause liver damage, neuropathy, severe joint and tendon problem. So why does your cholesterol raise? This is what I want to get to. Does your doctor tell you what is the cause of disease? Basically, the whole thing with this is, if we take it and we look at what the body is actually trying to accomplish, if the innate wisdom that created you is sending a message down to your liver to secrete the cholesterol, what does your body see? One of the principles is the law of supply and demand, right? If the innate wisdom sees a demand or a need, right? If the innate wisdom that God breathed into your body sees a need to repair something, would that cause the body to then produce it? Yes or yes? Kind of hard to hear? I can try. I already feel like I'm yelling. So what happens though is this. You can take, for example, the cholesterol, and you can take the statins to lower that cholesterol, but if your body is doing that for a reason of repairing something in your body, then what are you doing? Are you working with the power that made your body, or are you working against the power that made your body? You're working against it. So the questions really have to come, if my body, the innate wisdom, sees a need to produce the patching cholesterol, so to speak, right? Then the question really needs to be, what stresses of my life are causing me to have damage down to the cellular level that I can have something to do with to improve my body's overall well-being and health, so that way my body doesn't have to produce any more of that stuff. Do you guys get me with that? So in other words, if we don't do that, if all we do is we look at it and say the cholesterol is high, let's take it down, but we ignore why the cholesterol is high, then we're going against the body. So here's the next thing. When we look at cholesterol drugs, this is why they're so dangerous. Statin drugs work by inhibiting a vital enzyme that manufactures cholesterol in the liver. So when it comes to what that's doing is, the drugs then go in there. The innate wisdom is still telling the liver to produce the cholesterol, but then the manufactured drugs, the synthetic drugs, what they're doing now is they're going in there and they're keeping the liver from doing its job. So they have to, of course, have an effect on the liver, because that's where the liver's produced, and the drugs are trying to basically get in there and screw up the normal healing pattern. And so rather than addressing why there's inflammation or why there's damage, it's going in there and telling the liver, don't do your job. We don't want the high cholesterol, we don't want this LDL, because that's bad, that clogs the arteries, which is true. But in the same sense, if we ignore again the cause of what's happening there, then it's not really benefiting you long term. When you stop this enzyme, the liver can no longer make the cholesterol and CoQ10. Okay, CoQ10. Most of you have probably heard of that before. Okay, the whole thing with that is it's a biochemical need to transfer energy from the food to our cells to keep them alive and healthy. It's an antioxidant. It helps reduce inflammation and protect you from cancer. So one of the reasons why cholesterol-lowering drugs increase your risk of cancer is because it's also inhibiting some of what your body was designed by God to be able to do to also fight off cancer cells. Because when it comes to cancer, in April we'll be doing a cancer workshop, but when it comes to cancer, how many of you realize that everybody, they found through science, produces between 110,000 cancer cells in their bodies every day? You guys all know that? Everybody's, our bodies produce, they found, between 110,000 cancer cells every day in our body, every person is what they say. So here's the big question then. What does that say about your body's ability to fight off cancer if not everybody's walking around with tumors? That the power that made your body also designed your body to be able to detect those cancer cells and defeat them. You see what I'm saying? That when your body's functioning properly, your body has the ability to defeat and kill off cancer cells. Your bodies are doing it every single day. So then the question is that when somebody does have cancer, the question has to be then, where is the malfunction that's inhibiting my body from defeating them, and why is my body producing so many at one time? And if we don't understand or look at the cause, you know what I mean, then what happens is we can say, well, let's do chemo and radiation to kill off the bad cancer. But if you're still not looking at why there's bad cancer cells, then what did that really accomplish? That's why a lot of times they'll come back if you don't identify the cause. So what happens when we look at statin drugs, liver enzymes all messed up. Basically, this is kind of stuff that we talked about already, but it's in your notes also. The brain and nerve tissue, I mentioned before, 60% of your brain and nerve tissue is made out of cholesterol. If you lower your cholesterol with drugs, the brain and nerve tissue begin to deteriorate. How many of you would love to have deteriorating brain and nerves? No, right? So a lot of times what people don't realize is that even when, you know how when I ask you in the office, I say, whose responsibility is your health? What do you guys all say? Is your health my responsibility or your responsibility? It's your responsibility, not mine. So I can do the best I can to teach you about how to maximize your God-given potential, but it's up to who to be able to do those different things and to live a certain way. You know what I'm saying? Just like the Lord, He wants us to live a certain life, right? But it's up to us to be able to choose and live out that. So when you look at what happens with this, the whole big picture with that is that if we are taking, let's say, and I have a patient in a Bay 1 and a patient in Bay 2, they might have the identical problem. I could adjust them the exact same way if that's what they needed, and one person might heal faster than the other. Is that because I'm doing something different? It's completely dependent. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. You see what I'm saying? So what happens, and part of why we want you to understand some of this stuff, is because if we're trying to get you healthy, then you have to also recognize what's keeping you from getting healthy. Because we can work and we can get some success, but in the same sense, if we keep adding logs to the fire, so to speak, then it's going to slow down the process based off of all those different things that we're doing that's keeping us from being a full expression of life. When you deplete cholesterol from the brain, you block serotonin uptakes. This causes a severe increase in depression in many cases. So with the drugs, I did list a number of different symptoms, and pretty much that drugs cause a problem. In fact, cholesterol drugs, according to research, says research followed 114 patients with heart problems who began taking cholesterol-lowering drugs. They found that every point of decrease in the serum cholesterol, there was a 30% increase in death. So in other words, the more drugs you take for heart disease, the more likely you are to die from heart disease, which is pretty sad. The good, the bad, the deadly. Fish oils work better than statins. That's according to the American Medical Association. Coffee can raise cholesterol. Eggs improve bad cholesterol. So what kind of eggs do you think? Free range, that's right. So my eggs, that's right. But seriously, if you haven't ever looked at that, look at eggs. Go online and just look up free range compared to store-bought eggs. Completely different. I just saw something on Mercola maybe a couple months ago at this point that said something about, like, in a nutshell, that if you eat and consume a large amount of just store-bought eggs, it's basically the same as if you were smoking, because of the damaging effect on the body. Okay? Whereas if you actually take good free-range eggs, they're actually beneficial to the body. And the same thing actually holds true with, like, beef. You know, if you get grass-fed beef, you get healthy fats. It's going to be a good thing for you. If you don't, you're getting all kinds of other things that are very bad for you. Okay? And so it's just looking at your food source. Blood pressure. A lot of people will ask me about blood pressure, because blood pressure medications are one of the most common drugs that are prescribed on a regular basis to folks. Okay? How many of us know somebody who's taking a blood pressure medication? Pretty much everybody, right? So here's the thing. The cause of blood pressure and what's happening. If you look down, according to the American Heart Association, the bottom quote there, it says 90 to 95% of high blood pressure cases, the cause is unknown. So there's a way that seems right to man, but in the end, again, it leads to what? Death or destruction, because we're avoiding the cause. So when you look at what happens, they're telling you to thin your blood, but yet they're not necessarily establishing if the blood needs even to be thin. And if it is too thick, then the question would be then what? Why? Okay? So if you look at just simple hydration, some studies will show that the majority of people, over 95% of people, are severely dehydrated. Okay? So if you're dehydrated severely, and 80% of your nerve tissue is water, 20% of your bones water, 90% roughly of your blood is water, could your lack of drinking lots of pure water actually cause your blood to be thicker? Absolutely. So when you look at people who come in, and they'll be sometimes taking blood pressure medications, and sometimes it takes longer than others, depending on that person's health when they started. But a lot of times we'll find people who say within the first couple of weeks that their blood pressure starts to go down naturally. And part of that is because I tell every new practice member when they come in to drink lots of what? Life-giving water, okay? But the other thing from a neurological perspective is you have the autonomic nerves. Remember, hold up your fingers and hold up your hand, put 3 fingers up. Okay? You have nerves that make you feel, nerves that make you what? Heal, and nerves that make you move. Okay? So nerves that make you feel, nerves that make you heal, nerves that make you move. So you have the feeling nerves, which are your sensory nerves. That has nothing to do with your blood pressure, simply because, I mean, it can have an effect somehow, but you know what happens is, because if you're in pain, it's going to change the physiology of your body. But what happens is the main point of the nerve system that has to do with your blood pressure is going to be the nerves that make you what? Heal. Okay? Those nerves are called autonomic nerves. These nerves, what happens is, if you break those down, there's sympathetic and parasympathetic, nerves that speed things up, nerves that slow things down. So if you have an imbalance, remember dis-ease is the lack of balance, harmony, homeostasis. If you have an overfiring of one type of nerve or an underfiring of a different type of nerve, that's going to throw off your balance, your physiology in your body, which is going to cause your whole body to work abnormally. You with me? So in other words, when you look at it, I always give a simple explanation, which is just like if you go in your shower and you turn on a little bit of hot water but a lot of cold water, what's going to happen? You're not going to be happy, right? Unless you're weird. Or if you turn on no hot water, all cold water, or no cold water, all hot water, if it's out of balance, then what's going to happen is it's not going to be in a place where you're at ease. Does that make sense? And that's what your body's simply doing is most people are what's considered sympathetic dominant, which means that because we live in a stressful world, and most of the stresses that we have, we just stress ourselves out all the time. We are anxious about all these different things, and we work a lot and to do this and drink a bunch and eat a bunch of crappy foods and whatever else. And all of a sudden now we have this imbalance within our body that puts us in a state that's it's called a fight or flight state. Okay? And that fight or flight state is basically a sympathetic dominance to where your heart is beating heavier, faster, you know what I mean? Your blood pressure is going to be more in that state of, I'm going to either take you out or I'm going to run as fast as I can. Our digestive tract, we end up with people who have a lot of digestive problems because when you're in that stress out state, that sympathetic state, your digestion then is compromised because when you're in that survival state, your brain is looking for, I got to live out this situation right now. I'm not concerned about digesting. I'll get back to that later. So there's certain systems in your body that are put on the back burner because your body's in that state of sympathetic response is trying to survive. You with me on that? And so that's why a lot of people will have the same symptoms in terms of high blood pressure, high cholesterol, because their stresses are way too high. They have digestive problems. You see what I'm saying? They have visual disturbances. They have headaches. They have all these different things that a lot of times you can clump them together. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're actually looking at the underlying cause, which is a stressed out nerve system. Okay? So when you look at the next thing here, associated causes, stress, inflammation, smoke, and alcohol. Does somebody not know this stuff? I mean, realistically? If you smoke, you're going to have worse health than if you don't smoke, right? If you're under a great deal of stress all the time, prevent as much as you can, to be healthier. It's not that it takes a lot of research to figure this out. There's simple godly principles. So you got to make sure you're looking at that. But here's what happens a lot of times. When I've been in situations where I've seen, whether it's at a dentist or at a hospital or something like that, when they come in and they test your blood pressure, oftentimes what I've found, and I've been in some different professional discussions regarding this, is they're doing it a lot of times inaccurately and not reproducible. So in other words, if you go to the doctor and sometimes these nurses are taking them on one arm or the other arm, or the tube's in one area, you're positioned a certain way, you're looking down like this, you know what I mean? Because you all want to kind of look down where it's being, right? But if you look down, is that going to change the pressures in your vasculature? Absolutely. If you're laying down, is that going to be different than when you're seated? If they do it on your left arm versus your right arm, is that going to have any effect? If you do it more than once on one arm, would that be different than if you just did it once? You see what I'm saying? If you did it on the ankles, because sometimes with kids, they'll do them on the ankles, or even on adults too. They'll do it around the arteries down there. But see, what happens is you look at that, and if it's not reproducible, then oftentimes, because they're not doing it correctly, they're going to get higher readings, which then make you look as though you have a condition that you do not. And then you start taking medications for that because you've been told something. And anytime you're told that, every time you then go back to the doctor, what happens to you? You start to get a little anxious now because you're already taking blood pressure medication. You want to know that it's coming down. You want to know that it's not a concern, right? So now you have what they call white coat syndrome, which is a legitimate syndrome. You have an anxiousness that changes the vasculature. It changes your physiology, which then can give you a higher reading than what you would have 99% of your life. But then in addition to that, if you look at what happens, they may put you on a blood pressure medication for 3 or 4 weeks, and what tends to happen with your blood pressure at that point? It'll start to do what? A lot of times it'll start to go down. But then because it's not identifying the cause, realistically, if they put any of you on a blood pressure medication, how long are you expected to be on these different drugs? Forever. So then asking your doctor the question, and many of you have heard me ask this before, but you have to ask the doctors the question then, Doc, how long do I need to be on these medications? Is there anything I can do to actually get my body healing in a way that I don't have to be on these medications? Doc, do you think that my body can actually heal the way that it should be healing? And they may say yes, but then if their response is that you usually have to take it for the rest of your life, what is that saying realistically about their faith in your body to heal the way God created you? Is it a high faith that your body can actually heal? If their actions are saying you're probably going to be on this for the rest of your life, then what they're saying is that your body cannot heal. I wouldn't want to be part of any doctor's office who thinks that my body can't heal. If it's a truth, that's one thing, but that's not a truth I'm willing to accept because I believe in God's natural and supernatural laws. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times the trend is, if they put you on a medication for cholesterol, blood pressure, whatever else, the reason the trend is that you have to not only be on these for the rest of your life, but usually what happens to the amount that they're going to give you. It increases as you go because of something called the law of adaptation in time. Your body has to adapt for the sake of survival. So when you take poison into your body, now your body not only has to heal from that, but in the same sense, the medication is trying to alter some element of your physiology that's causing the blood pressure to go down. But if the body saw a need for that blood pressure to be elevated in that moment of your life based off of a big picture down to trillions and trillions of cells, and now we take that down, what is the body going to probably do? Try to take it back up. And that's why after 3 or 4 weeks you go to your doctor and they say, it was looking good. But then 3 months down the road, they're saying, now we're going to have to increase it. We're going to give you more. And then you go back 6 months later, now we're going to give you 2. You go back, and now we're going to try 2 other ones. Does it sound familiar? Is it because we're trying to take it down, but the body is saying, I need it up for the sake of life right now? Even though it's not the ideal situation, if you don't deal with the underlying cause, your body's responding that way for the sake of life and survival. Anybody not understand that? So oftentimes it's just like the example I've given to many of you in the office, just like with eyesight or with diabetes. You start off with 6 units of insulin, before too long you're on 18 units of insulin, and it's because over time, because of taking it down all the time, your brain's concerned about the blood sugar levels, and so if the brain gets the message that it's okay, then what is the brain going to do in terms of healing the pancreas? It's not going to see a need. If you're wearing eyeglasses and I can already, read the computer screen, is my brain ever getting the message that I need to heal the eyes? If the brain perceives it to be a done deal or a good situation. Well, let me ask you this. Can power that made your body also heal your eyes? Absolutely. You see? So we look at this, and it's just important that if you're getting your blood pressure, be consistent at all times. Make sure that you're hydrated. Make sure you're sitting properly. Your hands are like this. You know what I mean? Just sit in your lap. Be nice and relaxed. You know what I mean? Don't be looking down. You know what I mean? If you're standing up or sitting down, it will give you different readings simply because there's already enough user discrepancy because most people don't have the same people taking all the time anyway. Nor do they usually calibrate them as often as they probably require for that. So there's a lot of different factors, and what most cardiologists won't tell you either, but the legitimate geriatric studies also show you that as you age, what's normally going to tend to go up? Your blood pressure. You're not in the same physiological state when you're developing and working more and doing these different things. And so what happens is your physiology will change. And so those high levels now, it's not, 135. If it's anything over 135, you need to be on medications, not according to legitimate studies. That number of high also increases as you go. You see? And so when you look at an ideal situation, 120/80 is the number that everybody tends to know. In an ideal situation, if that's what your body's physiology feels that you need is best, then take it. You see what I mean? But just because it's up or down a couple numbers doesn't mean that's not a healthy response for you if you're doing the things that you should be doing to be a promoter of life and health. Okay? We're almost done. I talked about the fight or flight. What causes inflammation? We're going to get unhappy here now. What does that top one say? Sugar. Any of you have a problem with eating too much sugar? Realistically, most people do. Okay? And the problem, part of this is, when it comes to sugar, is increased sugar positions your body in a way that you're more vulnerable to basically all disease. Okay? So you got it. They say that some studies will say that you shouldn't consume more than 32 grams of sugar a day for an average adult. One soda already exceeds that. Just one soda. So if you consume a soda, you've exceeded it. If you consume, I've met people who come into our office and say, well, I drink a 2 liter a day, or I drink 8 cans of soda a day. What are they doing for their body? In every regard, they are trashing the life that God put within. You see what I mean? So there has to be something inside that says, time to take it seriously. You see? Lack of essential fatty acids. There's omega-6 and omega-3. Which one's the better? You need them both, but you need your omega-3. It needs to be a 2-to-1 ratio if possible. And so what happens is most of the foods that we eat, what are considered, when I do the nutrition stuff, I don't like to get into a bunch of take this supplement for this and take that supplement for that and take, you know what I mean? Yeah, I take supplementation if I feel like I need them. But if all I'm doing is taking these supplements to treat these different things, that's probably better than dealing with, taking a drug, in my opinion. But in the same sense, that's not the solution if your body hasn't been addressed in terms of the underlying cause. You with me on that? And so what happens when you look at the acidity, decreased pH, most man foods, which is going back to nutrition, I always tell people eat God foods, not man foods. So in a simple explanation, what did I tell each of you when you first started? If you have a carrot and a Dorito, they're the same color, but they're what? Very different in what they can do for your body. So which one did God make? Carrot. And He made you, He made a carrot. It's a better fit than if you made synthetic. Now, if you were a robot or a race car and you wanted synthetic, like Mobil One synthetic, or I use Amsoil, whatever else for my vehicles. You know what I mean? It's because they show that if it's a man-made piece of metal, it does better with synthetic stuff. But you're God-made, and therefore you need to stick with God foods. And the more you stick with God foods, you're going to see your health work at a level closer to the way God created you. That's not confusing, isn't it? It's not at all, is it? So you have to make a conscious decision then to lay off the stuff that's keeping your body from being that full expression of life. Free radicals, stress. Nobody wants to talk about stress either. Research shows that omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oil stops the buildup of plaque, which reduces the heart disease and stroke. Fish oil helps reduce inflammation and clean up the... So in other words, if your body is responding with these cholesterols because of the demand, then what they're saying is that there's natural ways that if you looking to lower it, or looking to, it's not to lower it, because it's not saying that if you eat healthy fish oils, it's going to lower it. It's when you eat healthy fish oils, what are you giving your body? Something that it needs to heal. So the result, it's just like if you look in the Cheerios box, and General Mills might not like me saying this, but it may not be the Cheerios that's lowering your cholesterol. It may be that you're not eating the other stuff that was causing your body so much damage that it caused it in the first place. You see what I'm saying? So there are trends with certain elements, because you're actually giving the body what the body needed to function at a higher level. So that's why you're going to see some of these things actually go down. And the way God created those different food sources, they actually have a purpose as well. Good fats. I listed all those in there. Definitely look through that. Here's one I'll just spend just a few minutes on, because this tends to be overlooked a lot of times, and that's the acid-base scale. So our bodies need to be in a place of harmony, right? So you remember how we talked about disease, dis-ease, a lack of balance, lack of harmony? What they found is that our body needs to be right in this area of right in the middle of the 7s to be balanced, the pH balanced, okay? By eating man foods, which are all the processed, chemically laden types of foods, the sodas, the junk foods, the chips, all that kind of stuff, it's good. They're all going to tend to vary way down here. Okay? So they're all going to be very, very acid foods. God foods typically are going to be more up on this end of it. Okay? So when you're eating man foods, part of what's happening is you're not only depriving your body of the essential nutrients that your body needs for healing, but in the same sense, you're also positioning yourself again that your acid levels are higher because those foods are based off of that. You see what I'm saying? So what we have to do is when we're eating God foods again, there are so many benefits from so many different perspectives that it's going to position you in a way, because most diseases, the cancers, the heart disease, the rheumatoid arthritis, all that kind of stuff, they're all basically heavy. If you look at a blood test, they're very, very low in that number compared to somebody who's healthy. And the good thing is that you can change this on a regular basis. So when you look at, for example, a soda, I think I put it on there somewhere in your notes. But if you look at a soda, let me see if I found it. Yeah. If you look at this chart that looks like this, you see that one? If you look right down here by the Coke, it says proper pH, a can of soda, pH is about 2.5. So you're supposed to be up here, but instead if it's way down here, this is where nobody likes this then, it's 50,000 times more acidic. It takes 30 glasses of water to neutralize 1 can of soda. 30 glasses of water, some research suggests, for 1 can. So how many of you know somebody who drinks at least 1 can of soda a day? We all know somebody. How about multiple? So there's no way in the world that their bodies are going to be able to survive at a high level if that's what's going on, and we're basically doing all those different things from a sugar perspective, a pH perspective, unnecessary calories. You get the idea, right? So you can change that, because then by not drinking the soda and instead drinking more water, then just from doing that and giving your body the water that it needs, now you're hydrating, you're keeping your blood at a closer to a balanced pH, and then you're also making sure your body has what it needs to detoxify. Now I'll have some people every once in a while will say, well, Doc, I just don't like drinking the water all the time, because then I have to what? Go to the bathroom. And then the question would be, why do you go to the bathroom? And don't say because I have to, okay? To flush out the toxins. So if you actually hydrate and your body now is functioning better and your body is detoxing you so your body can live and you can be in better health, why is that a negative thing? You see what I'm saying? Especially if it's a new thing. You'll notice that as you do it more frequently, that may change, but when you start to take necessary healing steps, your body might be in a state of like, praise God, it's about time, and have a lot of work to do, and it speeds, it's kind of more frequent initially, but the point is that you got to make sure you're giving your body those different things. I talked about all this in terms of your body's tendency. Can of soda, I talked about that. When pH is balanced at 7.3, the cells are able to absorb the right amount of oxygen, which is the second most important thing. Remember from the 4 Essentials workshop, life, fuel, and energy is the most important, oxygen second, water is third, and then food's new, and that's what it's basically saying here too. And then also, unless you balance your pH, you will never heal from any disease. That's what the studies suggest. Okay, the body will take the calcium from the bones to balance your pH. So a lot of times when people end up with because their diets and their bodies are so acid heavy, then what that does, dairy products, sodas, a lot of unhealthy red meats, is what happens is now your body pulls from the bones to give the body the calcium that it needs to try to balance this out, which then causes osteoporosis as well. When the body becomes acidic, your arterial walls become damaged, creating inflammation. Inflammation, again, is the cause of heart disease. When there's acidic residue, winds up building with this is kind of hard to see at this, the name to put on that symptom, pancreas, diabetes, heart disease, colon, Crohn's disease. All these different things are more prevalent when you have an unbalanced blood level. Okay, so when you take, for example, like the dairy, you know what I mean? Most people don't realize that dairy is not a good thing. So if you do consume any dairy, what should that dairy be? Organic as much as you can. Because if you're not aware of it, look it up. Look up what they do with, the whole idea, I grew up a farm boy, and when you look at what they're doing is they basically, we raised what's called replacement heifers growing up, okay? And just to give you an idea what that is, replacement heifers is, we would buy calves when they were young, and then we would raise them up, so then that way, once they're ready to breed, then we would breed them, and then as soon as they're ready to give birth, we would sell those cattle back to milk farmers. The milk farmers, what they would do is they would basically, the cows would be birthed there, they would wean, raise the calves until they were able to wean off, and then we would, guys like us would buy the calves back, and they would hook up mom for the rest of her life to milkers. And then they would keep giving her hormones and stuff to produce a lot of milk, and that's how that whole cycle works, okay? They're also doing stuff now with genetics. I'm not going to get into too much of that stuff, but it's worth looking into sometimes with the whole genetics. I had a patient one time who was a farmer, and he was talking about the fact that what they're doing now is they're taking lesser quality genetic livestock, and they're implanting the fertilized embryos and stuff into them to basically, as a host, raise up different. So you'll have one type of cow giving birth to a different type of cow. They're doing this because they're trying to see who carries shorter terms and who has the easier deliveries. And they're messing with nature so much now that it's just so messed up from the food sources. It gets a little bit crazy. So the point being is that when you look at your meat source, if you're going to eat meat, what kind of meat should you probably get? Organic and as natural as you can, grass-fed if you can, you know what I mean? Doing everything you can to try to keep it as pure as possible. If you're going to have sugar, what kind of sugar should you have? Organic, natural, consume a lot less of it, you know what I mean? But make sure the quality is as high as you can, especially in the process of weaning yourself off. The dairy is the same way. Caffeine, switching, I'm not saying drink a bunch of coffee and have it as caffeine free. That's not the concern. The concern is the fact that, the coffee on a regular basis is a diuretic that causes your body to not be as hydrated as it could and should be, okay? So there's all kinds of different, solutions. And I like this one here, warning. By reducing sugar, you normalize your weight, increase your energy, lower your blood pressure, lower triglycerides, feel better. Decrease inflammation, decrease cholesterol, risk of heart disease goes down, as well as other degenerative diseases, decrease osteoporosis. If you're willing to accept the side effects of the above, then you might want to consider following the program, okay? Point being is that those are all signs of better health. You get that? You stop doing the things that cause you to have poor health, and then your body gets well. The prevention, the key to preventing heart disease is, why is it so important, guys, to have a healthy spine? What does the spine surround and protect? The nervous system. And the nervous system controls what? Everything in the body. And if your nervous system has no interference, and that healing life energy that was breathed into our bodies can flow down freely without restriction to every organ, every cell, every tissue that's within the body, then what's going to happen with your level of health? It will be better, right? But if that nervous system has interference because of subluxation, bone neuroplasia, irritated nerves, now it's going to speed up the process of degeneration, both of the bones and the disc. It's going to cause interference to the nervous system. And if you have interference with the nervous system, what effect will that now have on your body's ability to express life the way God created you from a physical sense? Is it going to be good or bad? Good or bad? Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't confuse you there, okay? The atlas adjustment, which is the top bone, as I mentioned, of the neck, lowers blood pressure better than 2 combined medications. It was basically talking about, I like this, where it says, the procedure has the effect of not 1, but 2 blood pressure medications given in combination. Study leader, and then it gives the doctor's name. We saw no side effects and no problems. No side effects and no problems. Can you say the same about the treatment that he issues to his patients every day? Not even close. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of neat to hear stuff like that, but you have to listen to it with an open mind and realize that the media sometimes will do stuff that's a little bit different. Okay? X-rays show the procedure realign the atlas vertebra, which is the top bone ring around the spine. But anyway, and it decreased calcium, magnesium, a lot of times will decrease on the average by 2.5 millimeters of mercury pressure in the systolic, 1.4 in diastolic. Exercise on the average can decrease your blood pressure by 4 millimeters of mercury pressure with the diastolic, the bottom number, and by average of 2.6 by the top. So in other words, let's say you're getting adjusted. And let's say that's going to decrease your blood pressure by 14 to 17 millimeters of mercury pressure. And then let's say that you're drinking plenty of water. And then let's say you're giving your body the calcium that it needs and magnesium that it needs. Let's say also that you're exercising on a regular basis. And all of a sudden, this is 2 points, this is 15 points, this is whatever else. And then all of a sudden, you start to see what happened with your blood pressure. It's at a healthy level because now you're giving your body what it needs: life, oxygen, water, and nutrients, and then your body can actually be healthy, which is what the overall goal is. So the study compared chiropractic is 4 to 5 times more effective than food, exercise, and supplementation combined for lowering blood pressure. But if you listen to the TV at all, what is the thing that they always tell you? When diet and exercise are not enough, then take the medication. Well, now we know the truth, which is when diet and exercise, which are required for you to be healthy, are still not enough, then get your power turned on so the life flows more abundantly and your body's more likely to heal, right? Okay, and so basically this is the last thing I want to go over, which is on the last page of your notes there, or not the last page, but the third to the last page. But it says, in other words, the power that created your body heals your body. God put the most amazing healing power inside of you. The innate intelligence is the life within you. This innate intelligence that God breathed into your body this is what I believe. I believe that if God put me here in this day and this time with all the different stresses that there are in this day and this time, that He also gave the innate wisdom that is within my body everything that it needs to do what it needs to do to express life at its fullest, to do it when it's supposed to, where it's supposed to, and how it's supposed to. Does that make sense? And so as long as there's no interference, then that my body can allow these things to happen at a high level. But it's when there's interference, and these interference can come in the form of thoughts, traumas, toxins. They cause subluxation, which equals to disease. So when you think about thoughts, how many of you realize that your thoughts can cause dis-ease within your body? I can take a patient, take him in the exam room, and I've done it. And do a nerve scan, have them drink, soda or coffee, do another nerve scan, it'll be different. Just like that. I've done it before where patients come in, get a nerve scan, adjust them, and then look at it when there's less interference, completely different, right there, just like that. I've had folks who went in there and did a nerve scan, and then just while thinking negative thoughts, did another nerve scan while they were thinking positive, life-giving, blessed type thoughts, and the nerve scan's different, just like that. You see, we don't realize sometimes that because we're three-part beings, body, mind, and spirit, that there's so much of that to where I was reading a book one time that was on healing, and they were saying this lady had this chronic high fever, just a super high fever all the time. And then finally she realized that her words and her thoughts were what's causing this fever, because her greatest expression, she would always say is, "Oh man, that burns me up. Man, that burns me up. That fires me up." You know what I mean? And she didn't realize that she was speaking that into her existence, and she never realized that her fever was always high because that's what she'd always say and believe and whatnot. And that may seem silly to you guys, but see, we don't realize sometimes that if we have any symptoms, sickness, disease, negative thoughts, hurts, or whatnot that are not dealt with, and appropriately, then those things will have an effect on our bodies in one way or the other. You see? And so the thoughts are a powerful thing. You got to discipline yourself to catch those things. So if you walk outside and you don't like the weather, what do? Man, this is the day that the Lord has made. I'm going to choose today to rejoice and be glad in it. That's something that's doable, right? You can complain about the cold, but why not just put a coat on and rejoice the Lord? You know what I'm saying? It's just like we don't sometimes realize. I was talking to a patient the other day when I was thinking about the president of the chiropractic college I went to. He just passed at the beginning of this year, but I ask patients a lot of times, hey, how's your body healing today? I usually don't say how's your body feeling today. How's your body healing today? Oh, not too bad. You ever think that, or you ever say that? The president of the university, Dr. Sid Williams, he always used to say that. So you're doing some bad, then, is what you're telling me. He had a big, Georgia drawl. So you're some bad? Well, no, not really. Then why not speak life? Why not say, I am healthy. I am happy. I am terrific. Why don't you do something that brings God glory, or something, you know what I mean, that is a positive thing, rather than focus and speak negative all the time? Okay, I can do that. You know what I mean? And that's what we just have to recognize is all the time, is just to see the little things. Not that we're ever going to be perfect, but if we can focus on what causes those interferences, you'd be surprised at blood pressure, pretty easy. Type 2 diabetes, even cancers, pretty easy. When you start to get your body healing the way it was created to be able to heal. Does that make sense? And so the body needs no help, just know what? Interference, that's right. So there's some other things in your notes as far as how to naturally lower cholesterol, blood pressure, chiropractic, the Maker's Diet. Anybody ever hear of the Maker's Diet before? That's Jordan Rubin, New York Times bestseller. Jordan Rubin also part of a network called Beyond Organic, which is with Jordan Rubin. Red yeast rice, decreased sugar, normalized pH, fish oils, garlic, vitamin B6, hawthorn, CoQ10, calcium, magnesium. So these are all different things, but it's just basically giving your body what it needs to be able to be healthy. Okay? So other than that, I think at this point, unless anybody has any questions, maybe a question or two, I think we're going to wrap it up and enjoy the Saturday, all right?